Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Cabinet meeting, the last one of this calendar year. Announcements as usual to start with. Fire evacuation procedures for this evening's meeting. There are no fire alarms scheduled, so if it goes off, it's real, and we evacuate out through the door at the back of the room into the reception area, through the reception to the Memorial Park. Don't run off. We want to count everybody in and everybody out. In terms of the webcast of the meeting, if anybody is watching online, you can review back later as well, because the YouTube of the meeting will be up, as well as the immediate recording that you're watching. In terms of microphones, can we remind everyone, don't move them because they're camera focused, so keep them where they are if that's okay. And in terms of mobile phones, can we turn them off to silent or off? Yes, there is. Apologies for absence. I've got one apology this evening, and that's Councillor Morrow. Kerry is actually this evening, I'll do the announcement bit at the same time. Kerry is actually at the Beautiful South Awards this evening down in Brighton, because the Basingstoke Festival has been nominated to hopefully get an award this evening. So just a massive thanks, just to put on record, a huge thanks to the events team and to everyone who's been involved in the amazing programme of events that we run in the borough over the year and the amazing festival. And it's lovely to get recognition of a nomination, and it would be brilliant if we do bring the award home. So that's where Kerry is this evening, representing the borough at that awards ceremony, which is great. Any declarations of interest to anything that's on the agenda? No. Okay. There are no urgent matters. I've got the minutes of the meeting held on the 5th of November. Would you all be happy for me to sign them as an accurate record of the meeting? Agreed? Okay, I shall do so. I've done the announcements bit. So item 6 on the agenda is the first substantive item, Park Pruitt Cemetery, owned by Hampshire Hospitals NHS Foundation Trust. Councillor Laura James.
Thank you, Leader. I'd like to start by thanking the mover of the motion that has led to this recommendation before us tonight. And we thank the movers of the motion for meeting with us and the support they gave to the recommendation. We completely understand and support the need for and preservation of cemeteries that are properly cared for and maintained. We also understand how upsetting it can be when this is not carried out to a good standard. We visited and worked closely with the NHS hospital who own and operate this cemetery. We looked at a range of issues. We assessed the liability of the council taking ownership of the Park Pruitt Cemetery and what the requirements would be in us doing so. They are complex and difficult to resolve. Part of the work we did with the NHS was to understand the current and future maintenance requirements, site activity, boundaries. I'm pleased to report that the advice given and to the NHS resulted in an amendment to their maintenance schedule. The grass in the middle older section is now left in an area, creating a wilding area. In doing this, the children's section of the site can be maintained to a higher standard. We also offered to include the NHS in the council's closed churchyard grounds maintenance tender, and the offer to respond to any future concerns and advice needed to the NHS or to the contractors regarding the maintenance of the site. I'd like to thank the officers of the council in the work that they have done to find such a positive way forward that results in a better maintained cemetery. The recommendation to this cabinet is, do you want to say that? Is on page 14, and it's to note the improvements in the standard of maintenance of the NHS-owned cemetery, following advice given by the council, that the council provides the NHS with technical advice as required, and the option to use the council's contract for closed churchyards maintenance when the contract is retendered, and the council does not take on the direct ownership of this privately owned cemetery. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Would anybody else like to speak to the paper? We all good? Thank you. I think it's a really good constructive way forward. I'm conscious I was a seconder to Simon's motion that was put to council. So I think this is a good piece of work done to work with the NHS to resolve, hopefully, going forward positively, what was requested in the motion. This is important. And so, colleagues, as Councillor James has mentioned, page 14 has the recommendation. Are you happy to endorse the recommendation there in the paper? Agreed? Brilliant. Thank you. Next on the agenda, item 7, is consideration of the budget amendment made for the provision of community skips. And that's Councillor Laura James again.
Thank you, Leader. This paper considers the budget amendment proposed to provide a skip in each ward, 18 in total, quarterly to allow residents to dispose of unwanted household items. In looking at this amendment, there were so many unintended consequences, and that there would need to be a significant budget than that proposed. We have a mandatory target set by government to improve recycling to 65% and reduce waste to 272 kilograms per household by 2035. These targets are going to be very challenging, and providing community skips directly undermines our statutory duty to prioritise waste prevention and reuse above disposal. The limitations on the items that can be disposed of in a skip is significant. There is then the need to police the skips, adding additional costs and risks. With the requirements on us by the Environment Act, but also being aware of the needs of the residents, we will be increasing the concessionary rate for bulky waste from 50% to 60% and reducing the cost of 1 and 2 items collected, making it more affordable. We believe this won't adversely impact the mandatory targets we have to meet. The report outlines a range of initiatives we are going to take to enable residents to manage their waste with a focus on reuse, recycling rather than a landfill. What more we can do. Councillor Mackay and myself attended a meeting this afternoon, to plan our annual Keep Basingstoke and Dean Clean, linking it to the Great British Spring Clean. The initiatives outlined within section 10 of the report are positive steps, and we are taking to keep Basingstoke and Dean tidy and a great place to live and be proud of.
Thank you, Laura. Anybody else like to comment on the paper? We all good? It's good. It's obvious. Go on, Ollie, please.
I'd just like to say thank you very much for all the work. It's an outstanding report, and I think it's the right decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Annalie. Yeah, I think the Environment Act, and not to forget it was the previous government's Environment Act as well, that has led to this particular series of clearly statutory and mandatory targets that we need to meet. And so getting the policy right is really important. I think we are getting it right with the work that's going on, and I want to thank the officers.
I think it's going to be exciting, and I'm really looking forward to, all of those initiatives, and I think we can achieve great things.
Getting the recycling rate up, doing the waste in a new way that will help residents and tackle the issues are really important to us. So yeah, the paper is there in front of us. We have a recommendation on page 24 of the paper that we don't proceed with this particular budget amendment as presented. Do we all agree that? And agreed? Thank you very much. Moving back to the agenda and the next paper. It is the James show this evening, and it is the other Councillor James, please, on the next paper, which is the monitoring report for capital.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, as you can see, it's there's a normal mix. This is mostly for noting about where we are. There's 1 or 2 schemes that are slipping. The 2 major bits in there, one was May Place. You'll remember we added this fairly recently to the capital programme. There was a lot of uncertainty around what Hampshire County Council were doing around their budget and around supporting homelessness services, and the ability to have to reshape necessarily if we had to. Our services meant there was a sort of slight pause, and that'll be revisited. So that's pretty much why that's behind. And there's another one around Many Down, which essentially is, and I did ask our 151 officer to explain it, and he did. It took him 37 minutes. I said, can I have the short version? He said that was the short version. But essentially, we were going to lend £25 million. So it was a loan anyway, but it has to sit in our capital programme to get the infrastructure work done. Urban and Civic are now going to Homes England to get that loan, which means that we're doing a slightly different loan, which is why you'll see that adjustment come out. It shouldn't affect next year's because we'll correct it in February's budget, but that's where we are. When this does go to full council, there's a couple of vehements to be added. One is around that Many Down, because the name of the loan is sort of changing. It's a B loan rather than the infrastructure loan. And also there's a slight change and alteration to the capital budget for the MALs, which has kind of been widened to incorporate the whole town centre, where there's a couple of relatively sort of cheap opportunities to improve the town centre and help it thrive, which are just outside the MALs. So we're going to sort of effectively move that across and change the name of that budget slightly, and we'll have to get full council's consent to do that. And that's the capital programme.
Thank you very much, Gavin. Anybody else like to make any comments to the capital programme? Okay. Just one comment. I think it's important, doesn't it? Just show actually that having an intelligent conversation with government when it comes to Homes England can get the resources hopefully linked into Many Down, and that's quite an important thing. So that's, as a message, actually getting money out of government in that regard for Many Down is important. So I welcome that. If there are no other comments, the recommendations are set out to us on page 36 of our papers. There are 7 recommendations for Cabinet to note, and then there is 2 for Cabinet to request for Council to approve. Below that, 8 and 9. Are we happy with all 9 of them, 7 coming from us and the other 2 going to full Council as set out? Agreed? Okay. The last paper on the agenda this evening is the Q2 Revenue Monitoring Report. And he's Gavin again.
Yes, thank you. This is the regular monitoring report, just for noting, tracks where we are 6 months into the financial year. There's good news and there's bad news. The bad news is cost pressures are still there, so 1 or 2 areas have fairly minor overspends, which have all been addressed in future years' budget. The good news is that we continue to get a greater deal of money from our revenue, our investment and our property portfolio, which actually offsets that and some. So the good news is bigger and better than the bad news, and puts us in a position of being just shy of £500,000 ahead of where we need to be, which is a very strong position to be going into the second half of the year.
Thank you, Gavin. Anybody else like to say anything? We all good? Just to point out, the recommendation is on page 55. It's 4 bullet points clearly set out relating to the various things that we need to note. If Cabinet are happy to note them and take the paper as said. We agree?
Noted.
Agreed. Brilliant. That's noted. That's all right. There is nothing else on the agenda. There is no exclusion present. So the meeting is finished. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Leader.